Growing up in a small town, the highlight of my youth was discovering arcade games at the local convenience stores, malls, restaurants, and grocery stores. They were everywhere, and it was always special to discover something I had never seen before. I didn't always have the money to play them, but I wasn't above watching the attract modes or other people have a go at them. One genre of arcade game I always felt excelled was the sports category. These games were often simplified versions of the activity in question, easy to play, and they almost always had a competitive or cooperative multiplayer experience. As home games began to shift towards more complicated simulation-style offerings that were loaded with different modes and options, the arcade still retained its original easy-to-play design. When SNK debuted the Neo Geo in 1990, they made sure to have a few sports titles available immediately. These games were incredibly fun to play, and the control was so easy and intuitive, anyone could enjoy them. As the Neo Geo got a few years under its belt, more and more killer titles were released, and I was really happy to see they were keeping the sports titles alive and well in their library. They just kept getting better and better too. Gameplay, graphics, sound, and presentation seemed to improve with each release. In this episode, we will be taking a look at some of the sports games that made the Neo Geo so unforgettable. Whether it was baseball, football, basketball, or whatever, the Neo Geo had something for everyone. Baseball got some great early representation with 1990's Baseball Stars Professional. It played great and had an interface that was really simple to understand. Its only real downfall was that it was quite plain looking. SNK remedied that big time in 1992 with Baseball Stars 2. Everything here got dialed up a few notches. Better field and stadium graphics, better players and animation. Again, you wouldn't get a real MLB license, but I think that really makes these types of games more appealing. They were fantasy based and had their own look and feel. Much of the gameplay of the first moved over, so again, it's really easy to play. Every button had its own function, but you only really needed to worry about two the vast majority of the time. The multiplayer is of course timeless. Two friends locked in Mortal Kombat really elevated this type of software. You could waste hours battling it out to see who was the best. The nice thing is that it had some real meat on its bones as far as content. There were nearly 20 teams across the different leagues that were based on difficulty. You could sub in new players, use power-ups, and steal bases. It had everything a good baseball game needed and was easily accessible by everyone. These games are about as fun as this sport is capable of getting in video form. I have a love-hate relationship with Football Frenzy. I really like the presentation, the large players, the animation, the full-screen scaling effects. It really does make for one great-looking game of football. The problem here is that the arcade speed almost ruins the entire thing. You get precious few seconds to choose your play, and the on-screen action plays out lightning fast, making it hard to keep up with. Usually speed and simplicity goes in the favor of a game like this, but this one needed to slow things down a notch or two. The passing game also needed more refinement as the receivers literally stop in the middle of the field once the ball is thrown. You do get an entire quarter of play for your credit, and once you adjust it to the pace, there is some fun to be had here. The gameplay at first puts you in mind of Tecmo Bowl, but it actually feels much closer to the more semi stuff like Joe Montana Football on the Genesis, creating a weird hybrid that takes advantage of neither. It can be fun, but for the only American-style football game on the Neo Geo, I was hoping for something with a bit more hook and longevity. Not awful, but Football Frenzy 2 could have patched it up into a real contender.
Ready? Touchdown! Way to go!
Arcade appeal is something that drove the fun factor of many games in the 80s and 90s. The best way I can describe it is that it's a type of gameplay that was easy to pick up, and when it was over, you wanted to play it again. League bowling here has that appeal and then some. On the surface, it's just another bowling game. but get 2 or more players together on it and you have a hell of a great party title. The meter that is used to power and guide your shots isn't overly complicated, and the simple visuals have their charm. There's even a bit of sprite scaling in there if you appreciate that sort of thing. If you play games with your kids, you'll have a blast with this one. The Neo Geo was host to a couple of golf games, but this right here is the only one you need to know about. Developed by Nazca, the company responsible for Metal Slug, this is my favorite game on the platform. Pick your player, choose your course, and off you go. Golfers have some pretty radical differences in stats, and the courses allow you to visit Japan, Germany, Australia, and the United States. The gameplay of this one is what I use to judge all other golf games by. It's intuitive, easy to understand, and best of all, it's lightning fast. You get a few different options to put a little extra spin on the ball to get it to cut your desired direction. The animation of the swing is perfect, but the graphics otherwise are simple and straightforward. That's okay because it's the great gameplay that makes this one so good. It just has a rhythm and flow to it that allows you to just relax and enjoy the mechanics. High-level play can really drive you too. Trying to get that perfect run of eagles and birdies will take you some serious time, but fans of the sport won't mind the investment at all.
On the field! Player 1, birdie try.
Volleyball games have always held a certain appeal to me. I've never been any good at them, but they are fun nonetheless. Power Spikes 2 for the Neo gives you men's and women's leagues, as well as a futuristic Hyper League that appears to use cyborgs for players. If you've played the other volleyball games from the creators at Video System, you know the gameplay here well. You get different serve types, setups, and power moves to score that win. Graphics aren't anything special, but the animation is quite good. You'll have to practice a bit to get the gameplay down, but this one is a great one to add to your Neo Geo library. The computer can be tough, so multiplayer is highly recommended for beginners. As was the tradition, SNK released Soccer Brawl, a supercharged game of trick shots, power moves, and aggressive contact that went well beyond your typical title in the genre. It's fast and loaded with players getting stunned, knocked down, and even destroyed. Titles like this remain appealing today mainly thanks to the gameplay being so unique and different. SNK knew that they couldn't compete on any official level, so they made games that were fun and with features you rarely found elsewhere. It only really uses 2 buttons to play, so your kids may like this one as well. It's not the prettiest of the soccer titles on the Neo, but it's one of the more playable offerings that stands the test of time. Data East came through in 1994 with Street Slam, a 3-on-3 basketball game that plays similar to NBA Jam. The small court, fast movement, and quick passes all make for a great arcade experience. There's also lots of scoring to keep things fun. You choose from 10 cities from around the United States to compete against, or countries if you have the Japanese or European editions. Each team has their own stats for speed, defense, dunks, and three-pointers. The gameplay is pretty damn good too. It moves well and allows you to easily take advantage of both inside and outside scoring. The interface is so easy your grandmother could play it. While it does lack any official players or teams, the fun factor here makes it well worth picking up.
Cut in from
Jump
the center.
shot.
No basket.
Jump shot.
3-point basket. Upset.
Jump shot.
3-point basket. Upset. Everybody. Player one lose.
Take everything I said about Baseball Stars 2 and apply it here to Super Baseball 2020. This one is set in the future where robots also play with you. There are a few liberties taken with the rules as well. The home run zone is a small area in the middle of the stadium that you must hit for the home run to count. Miss it and the ball just rolls back onto the field. There are also spots on the field that mess with the physics of the ball, stopping it from moving any further. Just about every action in the game earns you money or takes it away. Crush a few home runs and earn the big bucks. While you're in the game, you can then use that money to upgrade your hitting, pitching, fielding, or sub in a robot that can smash the ball. The graphics here are very similar to Baseball Stars 2, but with a futuristic touch. Animation is of course excellent. I often still play this one and even really enjoyed the port to the Sega Genesis. It's just a great way to spend 30 minutes to relax. The multiplayer again is great for family and friends. If you find that you want a bit more excitement in your favorite pastime, this one should do just fine. Technos Japan even got in on the Neo Geo sports train with Super Dodgeball. Pick your team of 3 and engage in what almost feels like a fighting game. The back and forth starts out tame, but you soon will be throwing some crazy power-ups that make it difficult to defend against. The visuals here are animated really well, and it sounds great too. While Dodgeball isn't exactly the kind of sport I'd play as an adult, I sure do remember playing it as a kid. The premise here is pretty much exactly the same, except now you have a life bar that represents your team. The multiplayer of this one is one of the Neo's finest, and I highly recommend it for just about anyone of any age. Like the NES game, this one uses players from the Kunio-kun series, which goes back to stuff like Renegade. Older sports games excelled when they were fun, silly, and had gameplay made of solid gold. There were a number of traditional soccer games for the Neo Geo, but the Super Sidekicks series was the best to me. Easy to learn, easy to play, and it rivals Sega's Virtua Striker games in raw playability. Rarely have I encountered a title in the genre that has such an immediate pick up and play quality about it, and they all have excellent graphics and sound. There are 5 games related to the Super Sidekicks series on the Neo Geo. Parts 1, 2, and 3 share the same namesake, while the Ultimate 11 is the 4th. Neo Geo Cup 98 was SNK's final game in the Super Sidekicks saga, and their take on the World Cup title. They included a fair few countries, and you can set up local and international tournaments. The visuals have a great line-scrolling field and, of course, that trademark zooming effect. Players are animated well, but the best part is the gameplay. It plays fast, smooth, and the interface is really easy to understand. Even someone like me that usually sucks to high heaven in soccer games can play with a bit of success in it. 2 players really cranks up the fun. I really like this one and consider it one of the machine's more accessible titles for the sport. Even if you don't like soccer, give it a try. You may find it much more palatable than the sim options available elsewhere. Conventional wisdom would suggest that a video game based on tossing a frisbee would be less than ideal for a sports title. Hand it to the brilliant folks at Data East though, because they made one and it's pretty damn good. You will find few games that play as simple as this, yet have such a powerful hook and replayability. Basically, you just toss the disc back and forth, aiming your shots and waiting for a moment to open up when you can get that big score in. There is a grid behind each player that has different zones and different values if you get a goal. Matches are really fast and the computer is no joke on the higher difficulties. Multiplayer is again excellent, and with just 2 buttons being the focus of the gameplay, even your youngins can play. The Neo Geo has a few excellent single-screen sports games, but this one right here may just be the best. That brings us to the end of our look at some of the great Neo Geo sports titles available. While some of these are my personal favorites, there are even more out there. There are some excellent racing titles, and if you've never played Neo Drift Out, 2D rally racing has rarely been better. There's also a few pseudo-sports games like Battle Flip Shot and its sequel Bang Bead. Here you use a ball to score hits on your opponent's defense grid until they fall and you score a goal. It plays like the old Atari Pong titles of yesteryear, but are much more involved and strategic. Wrestling games didn't get much representation on the Neo Geo, but there was 3-count bout that was fast and challenging. It was a good-looking game with huge wrestlers and a great presentation. All of these titles I covered share very similar traits. They were easy to pick up and play, but deep enough to require some serious dedication to get really good at. They never took themselves overly serious and weren't afraid to be comical or lax with the rules. This created a special quality about them that makes many of them very playable today. They don't have outdated rosters to worry about. They don't have old rules that clash with their modern variants. The Neo Geo also lent a beautiful visual element to these titles that set them well above the typical console offering. It would be years later before you started seeing stuff at home at this level regularly, and honestly, they all still look incredible to me now. While some of you consider sports games worthless, I highly advise that you still give this list a try. These weren't your bog standard simulation style software releases. They were built to be fast, easy to access, and with a fun factor that was immediate and undeniable. Areas the Neo Geo itself often excelled in. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.